Listening to Mystic Lounge with Alan B. Smith. Rebroadcast on the Onyx Network. Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific. Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Mystic Lounge. This is Alan B. Smith. Thank you for joining us tonight. I have a great guest. His name is Garret Yount. He's a scientist at IONS to discuss healing through dreams and more. If you're not familiar with IONS, it's the Institute of Noetic Sciences. They've been doing work for many years, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with some of the other scientists that have worked at IONS as well. It's a great institute doing really good work blending what we might otherwise call, metaphysical studies with actual scientific research to back some of the phenomena that might otherwise seem supernatural or magical, but indeed is grounded in reality. So we'll be talking to Garret a little bit more there. Of course, if you like this show and Coffee and UFOs and anything else on the Mystic Lounge channel, please subscribe, like, comment down below, and of course, share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say. And if you listen to this podcast, wherever you do, please rate and leave a comment. All right, my guest is Garret Yount, PhD. He is a scientist at IONS, where his research focuses on mapping the mind-gene interface. He obtained his BS from the Department of Molecular and Cell Biology at the Pennsylvania State University, and his PhD from the Department of Neurobiology and Behavior at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. Hey, New York, all right. He was then awarded 2 postdoctoral scholarships, one in the Langley Porter Psychiatric Institute at the University of California, San Francisco, and the second in UCSF's Brain Tumor Research Center. During his postdoctoral training at UCSF, he was awarded a fellowship from the Robert Steele Foundation of Pediatric Cancer Research in New York. All right, New York again. And so much more. I can't even go through his whole bio, but I'm just happy to have Garret on. Garret, welcome to Mystic Lounge. How are you?
Thank you so much, Alan. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. So on Mystic Lounge, we cover a wide range of topics. And one of those topics is healing, is wellness, spirituality, self-help sort of approach to spiritual growth. And for me, that's a really important topic. And there's always a connection in my mind to paranormal intrigue and pursuits, the metaphysical, and our well-being. So with that said, tell us a little bit about your interest in science supporting what otherwise might seem like superstition.
Gosh, that's a big topic.
But yeah, start anywhere you like. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I think I just naturally I like scientific thinking. That seems to be the way my brain likes to work. And from a young age, I started having experiences that made me realize there's something more going on with the mind than everybody around me is talking about.
Okay.
So, when I was a teenager, had basically a pretty loud clairvoyant experience involving, I was hiding something from my parents in my room, and when they found it, I kind of saw them finding it. So I was actually reading The Lord of the Rings at the time, in the room with elves, and so it was like a channel in my mind just switched, and I saw them, digging out this contraband, and threw the book down, ran across the house, down the stairs, into my room, and they were in the exact spot, and I, was overwhelmed with I couldn't care about getting in trouble anymore. I was just like, I just saw through the house. I just, there's something pretty amazing. So I didn't get in much trouble because I was so basically like fainting, laying down, like tripping out on this experience. So I started reading everything I could about the mind, and kind of went to school, wanted to try to pursue that. And that's kind of what got it all started.
Was it just that one incident?
It wasn't the one, but that was the loudest one. That was
The
the one
loudest
that
one.
really knocked my socks off.
Yeah. I have to ask you this. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming you're a Lord of the Rings fan.
Oh, yeah.
Still, I feel like once it gets you, that's it for life.
Definitely.
Now, if you don't want to answer honestly, that's totally fine. But what did you think about The Rings of Power season 1?
Oh, I don't want to comment on that.
Okay, so we're on the same page. All right. We'll leave it there.
Horrible.
Yeah. Okay. So back to spirituality, because that was not a spiritual experience. The Rings of Power. What was your second occurrence that was otherworldly, for lack of a better word?
I'd say the second one was when I asked this girl out to dance at a school dance, and because I heard that she'd broken up. This guy, can't say their names, but this guy was big, and I was the word got out that he was gonna beat me up, and I was scared, super scared. And this is a long time ago. No cell phones, so I got home, and my dad was super agitated. Like waking up. Are you all right? And it was really strange for him to do that. Like, yeah, I'm fine. So he calmed down. He was like, I really had this bad feeling that something was up with you. And of course, I lied to him. It's like, no, nothing at all. But for me, that really stood out because it had never happened before and after. And that was definitely the most scared I've been in my childhood. And it felt like my dad sensed that.
And then you studied science, and now you're at the Noetic Sciences. So how's that? How do you bridge that? How do you bridge those experiences with studying science? Because science, to be successful, it has to be rigid to some degree. It needs a methodology and formula.
Yeah. Yeah, you need to have a methodology and formula, and I think that you also have to accommodate to what the kind of experience you're looking at. So that's why I was happy and lucky to join the crew at IONS, because they've been doing that for years. Like Dean Radin, our chief scientist, has honed ways to kind of in the telepathy experiments. You don't, because I don't know, the information comes through some wavy reality shifts, and so it doesn't come through super crisp. So, for example, there are techniques to get around that are still very quantitative, but it allows for a little bit of fuzziness. For example, in telepathy or remote viewing experiments, the seer will fill out a worksheet and draw and stuff, and then they'll have judges look at the actual targets and try to match them. So they're not, Dean's not looking for exact matches, this word and that word, but if a judge can see the relationship between things. So looking for relationships rather than exact, hits. Things like that.
How do you rule out correlation just being coincidental?
Yeah, you do it a lot of times, and you have enough data, and you have multiple judges, and then Dean does a bunch of statistics on it.
Well, Dean's name always comes up. Speaking to Ray Hernandez, he always references Dean. Dr. Bob Davis, who have a good relationship, he references Dean as well. What have you worked with on Dean? That's kind of, or have you not? And is your work separate? Are you kind of all in your own compartments of study?
We do some projects together, and some, more than one of us is almost always on one project. The project I'm just starting with Dean is a telepathy experiment. I call it Telebelly because it's a gut telepathy experiment.
Like the Teletubbies. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. it's an extension and builds on work that Dean and Marilyn Schlitz did back in 2015, perhaps, or even 2005. I'm not sure. And it was a telepathy experiment where there was a sender and a receiver. And instead of looking for brainwave signals for detection of information between the sender and the receiver,
Mm-hmm.
they looked at the enteric nervous system, or the gut. So they put electrodes on the gut, and the brain wave sensor is called EEG, electroencephalograph, right?
Okay.
So the gut one is called EGG, electrogastrogram, and it basically measures the electrical activity of the gut.
Wow.
And so I'm sure
Yeah.
your listeners are aware that the enteric nervous system is a massive system,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's emergent properties of it. It uses the same neuropeptides that are in the brain. And so their hypothesis was that the gut might be a more reliable indicator of picking up telepathic messages because it doesn't have the monkey mind overlaying
Mm-hmm.
over top of it. Like, oh, that was the answer last time, it can't be again.
Okay.
Maybe they would get around that. And
So really quick, has uh, conventional science have mainstream scientists, university, academic sciences studied consciousness only through the lens of the brain, and this is a novel approach.
yes, as far as I know, this is a novel approach. But again, they're trying to look at telepathy, so it's kind of a
Yeah.
double novel. So anyway, that worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talked to Dean about extending that because I thought, well, if we're talking about the gut and this emergent property of the gut being able to
Mm-hmm.
pick up telepathic signals, it's very much primary function is dealing with food and digestion, right? And
Yeah.
actually, I was interested because my PhD was on the neuropeptide Y, which is one of the primary drivers, the neuropeptides that drives hunger and satiety.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, let's actually, I don't know. I mean, this study hasn't been. We're just recruiting, and I don't want any of the audience to be
To
contaminated.
be influenced. Okay. Well, we can jump through this. That's fine.
Yeah.
You know.
So it's a gut telepathy experiment
Mm-hmm.
with a twist, and it does involve sender and receiver, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Like, I can't wait to do it. Sorry,
So
I started that. I didn't realize that we're kind of there's some a little bit of surprise that we want to make sure.
Oh, of course, and it's the same thing with investigating and detective work, right? It's like
Yeah.
you can't, you have to refrain from sharing certain information so that you can validate, um, an answer, or in your case, data later. Um, but as far as receiving, when it comes to dreams, you've done some work on healing,
Mm.
PTSD healing in particular. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that is?
Yeah. So I've been fascinated with dreaming also since a young age. The books I learned lucid dreaming from the Carlos Castaneda books.
Hmm.
So lucid dreaming is a dream when you wake up inside your dream. You have your waking consciousness, but you're in the dreamscape. And there's
Mhm.
all kinds of techniques to do that. People naturally do that. Some people just spontaneously. I believe everybody can learn to do it.
Yeah.
So I actually was initially interested in lucid dreaming as a tool in the lab to demonstrate a very overt direct connection between internal conscious events and the regulation of gene expression.
Okay.
So I reached out to a luminary, wonderful lucid dreaming teacher, Charlie Morley. He's out of London.
Mhm.
He is authorized to teach within a Tibetan school of Buddhism. And I said, hey, I want to do this experiment with lucid dreaming to show that a dream event can trigger gene expression. And again, neuropeptide Y is what I was going to look at. So I was going to say, I want to have dreamers go to sleep pretty much fasted. So they're going to sleep with an empty stomach.
Mhm.
And then they're going to have a lucid dream that they're just chowing down, having a huge feast, and see if that would trigger neuropeptides that regulate hunger to change. So I thought it was a fantastic idea. Charlie did too. Put in a grant, and we didn't get the grant. So we're like, but we.
Well, it sounds like a smart idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still trying to do it. But in the meantime, I was lamenting with Charlie about not getting this, and so his specialty is PTSD. He actually has been awarded a Winston Churchill Fellowship to do research on PTSD. He does these workshops with veterans, and they have experienced tremendous healing through their dreaming. And I've actually done some research with PTSD previously too. So I learned about his workshop. So, well, let's see if we could just very lightly apply some science to that in the beginning. Just the first step is which we've done, the pilot study, is to see, can we study, and I'll describe what we looked at, but the goal was to see if scientists poking around asking questions and being part of the whole thing was going to muck up the works, right? He's got this great workshop, people experience tremendous healing, but then if we put science on top of it, is it going to mess it up? So this is again to your question about how do you do science with these kinds of things.
Yeah,
So
almost like the observer effect in a sense.
Yeah, very much so. So let's give it a try. And this was funded by two individuals, Constantine Cruz and Claudia Wells. So we did this study with Charlie. It was during COVID, so everybody was at home. It was an intensive 6-day workshop with live Zoom. Many hours of live Zoom, and then homework, and of course nighttime practices. And if you like, I can talk more about that. But the kind of what happened is the opposite. It seemed like something about this workshop, he had even better results than he's ever had. We had 76% of the people achieve lucid dreaming in this 1 week. So there were 49 participants, so 37 of them achieve lucidity just within that 1 week, which is pretty remarkable, way beyond our expectations.
Okay. I mean, what's the baseline for the average person? What's the percentage of the average person? Not under those conditions.
Yeah. I don't know the percentage of just people that have spontaneous lucid dreams. I know that it normally happens, if you look at a distribution of spontaneous dreams over age, it happens a lot more in the youth. As you get toward my age, it's less common without trying to do it.
Okay.
But with his workshops, where people would, it's like, okay, they come, they've never had a lucid dream before, and they start learning the techniques. It was be common to have. It would be great if half of them did during that week. Very often after the week is over, after the pressure is gone, they'll start getting lucid, right after the workshop. He would always talk about when we were designing it. It's like, the problem is the workshop, there's all this learning, and sometimes people feel pressure, and then as soon as it's over, they start having the lucid dream. But that's not going to work for me, because our measures are going to be, we're going to be done measuring. It's going to be over. So, so I would just say it bumped up from 50% to 75. So that was great.
That's impressive. Yeah.
So, who knows, it kind of was the opposite effect that, partially, Charlie would always, have a dedication for the practice, talk about we're doing this not just for our own healing and transformation, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. And there was a real sense of all of us, the scientists and the dreamers, were hoping this is going to be something that helps everybody. So that's kind of why we did that. Am I still with you, Alan?
Oh yeah, I just put you on a full screen. Yeah, we're still together. Don't worry. Yeah, but okay. So let me ask this: you said that as people get older, they have more difficulty, or becomes less frequent.
Yeah.
Lucid dreaming. How much effort does it take? Because I have to be honest, every once in a while I'll have a guest on, and the subject will come up, and then I'll give it a go, and then I just give up because I'm like, this is not happening. It's like how frequent, how consistent does one have to do that to achieve true consistent lucid dreaming?
That's super, super tough question. I think that the one answer that's not necessarily intuitive is important factor, and this I'm all learning from Charlie, is the motivation.
Mm.
So if you want to have, if you say, I want to have a lucid dream because I think it'd be cool, and I'm going to fly around, or I'm going to have sex with a movie star, that like ranks
Is
somewhere.
that a common request?
That's pretty common,
That's
yeah.
funny.
But for example, the opposite extreme is all these, these 50 people all coming together with PTSD, have serious need. They want to reduce
Right.
their nightmares. They want to have healing. They're very, very motivated.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably the most important factor. And so that doesn't mean that you couldn't come up with your own reason, which, of course, everybody, if you think about it, and you want to have personal transformation, you want to,
Mhm.
you know, embrace your inner child or deal with an issue.
Mhm.
Um, I think that so number one would be kind of have your plan, have your motivation, and be clear on it.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's there are many techniques, and you pick the one that kind of resonates with you most. I really like reality testing,
Mhm.
which is during the day you multiple times stop and just question, am I dreaming right now? You do some kind of test, like pull on your finger and see if you can stretch. And the idea behind that is the habits you establish during this conscious state of mind will follow you into that dreaming state of mind. And so then in the dream, you'll be out of habit question, am I dreaming? And then you realize you are dreaming, that kind of a thing.
I see. Yeah. And once you're there and you can establish that you're dreaming, how do you work through PTSD? And PTSD is very broad. I mean, there's different types of trauma that causes that.
Yeah. So it's different for each individual. But the goal is to basically transform the trauma in the dream.
Mhm.
So just kind of in a general sense, if you're having a nightmare and that, just say it's a monster,
Mhm.
instead of fighting it or running from it, the idea is to send it love and try to transform that. And this, it's a
Mhm.
simplistic version of it. Um, but it again, it's very important going into it. What is your intention? So Charlie
Yeah.
takes the participants through a process of devising their dream plan, and they can decide. I want to meet my inner child. I want, or kind of to choose it. And what's
Mhm.
interesting is that apparently this dreaming mind, which is your subconscious mind, is very, wants to take care of you and won't let you do anything that you're not ready for. Charlie
Right.
argues that it's much safer than psychotherapy because it's your own mind working with yourself. So there are examples of people that go in with a dream plan of I want to face something,
Mhm.
and they get lucid. They call this out in the dream, and then a waiter will come by with a sign and says, you're not ready, or no access. So
Hmm.
there can be this dialogue, and kind of reorienting you to what kind of healing, what kind of transformation you're ready for at that time.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because oftentimes the problem we have with dreams is that it's just full of symbolism,
Yeah,
and then you're stuck with trying to like deconstruct that, whereas that's a very literal message
right.
that the subconscious is sending you, and I didn't realize that that could be so clear in a lucid dream.
Yeah, I think lucid dreams are clear in more than one dimension. One that like it lights up, the colors are vibrant, you feel like the energy of everything, but
Mhm.
also this kind of information, this kind of direct communication between levels of your mind.
That's interesting. So, what is it similar to the traditional psychotherapy where they say, "Kinda talk to your inner child"? Is that is that the same thing? You're just doing it in the dream?
Um, my sense of it is it's a little bit different. It's much more experiential. There's not really discussions in there. It's more experience, like hugging and feeling and experiencing transformation. And you know how dreams can be just fantastical. So you can be walking and you decay and then you come
Mhm.
back and decay again over and over again. Just really strong, basically experiences. Um, for another example is the you know, recurring nightmares of a tsunami coming, and always it just startles someone on the dream. And so then,
Yeah, yeah.
lucidity is like, I am going to, embrace this. So she grabs two buckets from the sand and starts just windmilling up the wall of water and then rides on the top of it. So that it's not really a discussion. It's more of like, I am now merged with this force, and I'm, you know, riding it. I'm with it. I'm no longer fighting against it. So it's kind of like experiences rather than talking. If that makes sense.
No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, dealing with my own life, like the issues that crop up on occasion, people pleasing or
Mm.
addiction for me is something that I've dealt with. Are those like things that are subconsciously kind of programmed into your mind, and you are what hacking into the subconscious when you're dreaming to kind of like fix those things?
So I would say yes, absolutely. And no, I'm not qualified to answer that question. Just point out that Charlie's has all this training. We're all qualified to teach. We
Hmm.
have a psychotherapist there during the whole process, and this guy's name is James Scurry, and his particular style, it's called mindfulness-based core process psychotherapy. So
Hmm.
there are those folks present, and listening to them talk, to answer that, I would say what they have said to me. The
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
to your question is yes. This is absolutely you working. The dream is a bridge to your subconscious. So
Okay.
you could call out, I want to meet my addiction. I want to,
Hmm.
so you could do it that specifically, or on the way other side, you could just call out, show me what is best for me to know right now. And
Yeah.
you're asking your subconscious
Right.
to reveal. And that's, again, it, and Charlie references Carl Jung, and saying that it's safe because the dream is there, your subconscious is there to
Hmm.
protect you. And so, but opening up that kind of bridge does allow for something like, if an addiction is there and it's just unresolved, then you can kind of work through it.
Now, addiction is something that, is, I would say, more of an internal thing. It has consequences, which could be very traumatic. But is it more difficult when the PTSD is something that is directly external happening to the individual, whether that be, rape or abuse or, a manipulative relationship? That it's like, it doesn't happen in one day. It happens over a long period of time and really digs deep into the subconscious.
Yeah. I don't know how to compare them. I'll just say that almost
What
everybody.
with the dream work you've done, is it any different? Is it more difficult?
The thing is, everybody in the dream has very high level PTSD, either from combat trauma or rape.
Right.
All these
Okay.
very severe PTSD, and they're all experiencing tremendous healing. So I don't know of
Mhm.
someone that's, basically everybody, they're screened into the study
Mhm.
above the clinical threshold for PTSD. So everybody's coming in with a high level. We haven't worked with folks that are a bit lower in the scale.
Have you seen any other, what one might call paranormal side effects of doing lucid dreaming? And the intention obviously is, psychological healing, but have
Mm.
you just by accident, even if it's just, anecdotal?
Um, well, I am of the mind that synchronicities are an example of a psi event. I really like synchronicities.
Hmm.
And I just say that during these, so the pilot study we've done and we have the results, and we're
Yeah.
now in the process. We're just finishing a replication of that, with a randomized control trial style. So as I said, the first pilot was to see if scientists were going to muck it up, and the answer was no. It's working even better.
Okay.
So we published that, but of course there were, so the pilot, there was no control.
Mhm.
So it just could be that not only did the scientists help more people get lucid, but it's was the active ingredient in them getting better from PTSD because they were in a study, right? That's a possible interpretation.
Yeah.
So we're repeating the whole thing, but now 100 people split up 50-50, and the 50 of them are in a waitlist control group where we collect data where they're not getting the workshop at all, and then later they get their workshop. So
Okay.
I just mentioned that because we're just fresh out of it, and the incidence of synchronicities. Many of the participants said, I had this crazy synchronicity. In the dream this happened, and then in real life this happened. So I think that's the one thing I've noticed in terms of the lucidity linked to more
Mhm.
of a psi event. Um,
Well, do you ask people what kind of dreams or reoccurring dreams that they have before going into the study?
What we do, we use a standardized dream questionnaire. So it's validated. Our collaborator is Tadas Stumbries, the University of Vilnius, very accomplished lucid dreaming researcher, and developed a tool for basically the depth of lucidity. I'm sorry, first, the experience of nightmares. So not just the frequency of nightmares, but their experience of nightmares. So how distressing were the nightmares? So that's something that is administered to all of the participants before the workshop,
Mm-hmm.
immediately following the workshop, and then 3 weeks later. So basically a month from the beginning, to see if any gains were maintained.
Okay.
That's what was one of the biggest outcomes from the pilot study, is the experience of nightmares was drastically reduced in a good way. They were the amount of distress from nightmares was just phenomenal. The testimonials were like 10 years of psychotherapy, and now in 1 week I've free of my nightmares.
Right. Do you think that psychotherapists are, I don't want to maybe threatened by these new therapies? You have, psychedelics now that are being used. You have the dream therapy. Um, there's another one that's popular. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now. That's gaining traction. But these are all alternative therapies that aren't psychotherapy and aren't, psychotropic drugs being, prescribed by the pharmaceutical industry and the doctors. Is there a threat there, or are you guys good? Are the alternative approaches, do they have a clear path?
That's a good question. I think I'll answer that by filling in what I think that third one might have been, or the one that I would choose for that. It would be EFT, or emotional freedom techniques, the tapping, particularly, particularly effective for PTSD.
Right.
And yeah, there could be a territory war, but I'm a molecular biologist. What do I know?
Well, everything is molecules as far as our bodies are composed, so that's quite a bit. Well, then that begs the question. I mean, do you feel that there are instances that chemistry is just a better way to go?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. I think there, it's kind of like surgery is, very good thing for certain situations, and
Sure.
I think there are some chemicals that are great, but of course, psilocybin's a chemical as well.
That's true. Yeah. Can you heal the body?
One thing to just mention about that is, particularly about the dreaming, is anybody can do it. You could literally, anybody can learn to do it.
Yeah.
Now, again, it's tough. It's easier. You take a mushroom, you're gonna have the experience, and as you've experienced, I have too. Goes in waves. Sometimes it's really hard to get lucid. So I don't want to sound flippant about it, but I think there is truth in the fact that lucid dreaming as a therapeutic tool is available to everybody.
And is it something that you can do on your own, or do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just reading the Castaneda books is what got me lucid for the first time.
But if I have, PTSD, does one just do lucid dreaming on their own, or is it better to be guided by someone like yourself?
Well, all of my experience is that it's much better to be guided by psychotherapists. So everything I've witnessed was in the presence of James Scurry, a psychotherapist, and he in particular is familiar with lucid dreaming. He does lucid dreaming himself. He tells the story of transformative healing through lucid dreaming, and that's why he became partnered with Charlie and is putting so much effort into collaborating with us.
Yeah. Can you heal the body? Have you seen any side effects where there's physical healing?
Yeah, so I haven't. There's a report in 2014 in the journal Medical Hypotheses. I think the first author is Zapatera. It's a report of chronic pain that was resistant to all Western treatments, which chronic pain is often quite problematic. And one lucid dream, it disappeared. So, I mean, it's the only report that I've seen that's in the literature. But it's written up, it's peer reviewed, it happened. lucid dreaming, yes, and normal dreaming. So just a little history of this.
Mhm.
The famous Greek medicine guy, Asclepius, the temple of Asclepius. So the symbol of medicine, that
Yeah.
staff with the intertwine, that's the
Mhm.
staff of Asclepius. And the temple of Asclepius was known to be people would go there to sleep in the temple
Mhm.
overnight. And I think I don't there were snakes of some I don't know how close they were to when you're sleeping.
Mhm.
Basically, the idea is you go sleep in the temple of Asclepius. In your dream, you would get messages or healing so the idea of dreams being healing is, ancient.
Mhm.
Um, the lucid dreaming part of it, of course, is ancient and other and in the Tibetan traditions.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I would imagine that perhaps it's just, lack of documentation
yeah,
because just sleep in a cave and you have a dream and you're healed. I would assume that they were employing some sort of a guided technique, I would imagine,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And we just don't know about it because, I mean, so many records were lost and burnt, and we're pretty limited in what we know actually took place
yeah. I imagine
in
so.
ancient Greece. Yeah. And the Bible, yes, it speaks about dreaming, but less about the healing side. I think it's more about
Yeah.
premonitions and yeah.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Have you used it for premonitions?
I've had premonitions from normal dreams,
Not from lucid dreaming.
lucid dreams.
Ah, okay.
For me and for many, it's hard to hold on to the lucid dream. Once you're there, it's so exciting and it kind of burns off. One of the techniques that Charlie says to counteract that is there's a couple of ways you can try to spin to stabilize the dream, or you can
Okay.
say lucidity boost, call it out, and it pulls in the dream.
It kind of sounds like a video game or like a
Yeah,
computer virtual reality, right?
yeah, yeah. It feels a bit like that. Yeah,
Can you build up like a boost bar? Like, can you get
yeah.
like extra hearts?
You totally could do that.
Right.
Um,
So what have people said to you about their healing from this PTSD lucid dreaming
oh, just
technique?
hu hu you know, at this point, literally over 100 people saying that, years of all kinds of therapy, and this is, something that has just leapfrogged past that.
Yeah.
Nightmares going away. And I just want one important point to make is that the folks that went through the workshop, which involved not just learning lucid dreaming techniques, but dream circles in talking about their normal dreams. And again, some of
Mhm.
the normal dreams were big dreams. It involved meditation, yoga nidra. It involved James Scurry, the psychotherapist, commenting on other people's dreams. It involved group coherence. So there were people that we experienced reduction in their PTSD symptoms who didn't get lucid during this workshop. So just the other aspects of it, and
Yeah.
of course, the focus on dreaming and the awareness that you can heal through your dreaming.
Yeah.
People would describe non-lucid dreams where really profound healing, transformative things happen. I mean,
Mhm.
bringing everybody to tears. I mean, super, super emotional. Um, so yeah, it does, and not necessary. You don't need to get lucid in order to heal from your dream. I know that's kind
Yeah.
of repeating that point.
Jingus in the chat says, any of y'all try hemi-sync meditation? Are you familiar with hemi-sync meditation?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. That's a great technology to kind of set in an altered state of mind.
Mhm.
I believe that's out of the Monroe Institute,
Okay.
who are great partners with us. I really like those guys.
Oh,
Those are
there you go.
good
Yeah.
guys. Yeah.
It, um, and that is essentially using musical,
I think it's
frequency.
binaural beats. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
two sides of your two ears are getting kind of offset beats, and it creates some kind of offset vibration in your brain.
Well, the brain does give off a electromagnetic field.
Yes, it does.
That's been shown. It's been proven. It actually kind of passes through the actual fleshy material. It's present. It's measurable. So, if that's the case, do you believe that we can psychically or could hypothetically communicate psychically with each other, or is that just a lay person's misunderstanding of what the brain waves are?
That's a great question. So the EMFs emanating from the skull, from the brain, are real. But speaking about electromagnetic frequencies, that's a physical thing, and it dissipates with distance.
Right.
The heart puts off a much stronger EMF,
Hmm.
and that is this great research out of the Heart Math Institute showing that yes, the kind of the signature of the EMF, it's kind of donut shape around your body. You come in the close contact with another person, those fields can interact and they can transfer energy. It's amazing. It's tremendous.
So you've seen science has measured a transfer
Yes.
of energy? Really?
Yes. And they can pick up. So, first step is Heart Math Institute showed when someone is mentally experiencing positive emotion versus negative emotions, they can see the difference in this field. And beyond that, they can see a person close by, that energy could be transferred. But just back to your original question, that can't explain at a distance. So that really only works when you're close. So yes, when you're up close, these kinds of things can happen. But as we know, most of the psychic phenomena are not limited by distance. So I would say no, that cannot be an explanation for the vast majority of what we consider to be, for example.
So when you're around someone and you're saying I'm kind of picking up on their energy, you could potentially be picking up on their energy. It does, because you said it actually interferes.
It can transfer the energy. So yeah, if you get a bad vibe about somebody, that could be a real energetic transfer that's registering in your subconscious, and it just bubbles up into like this vague feeling of ickiness, and that can be real.
Yes. So that means someone's positive mindset, someone who is in a legitimately healthy state of mind, are they giving off an energy that can positively affect you?
Absolutely.
So then what about someone who has the facade of being happy, has the facade of being quote unquote positive, but it's a mental effort to do it, and it may not be in the heart per se?
Yeah, I would say that you're going to get the actual vibe from them, which is negative, despite them trying to put on a different face.
So that would mean that there was a separation between our five senses perceiving, body language, micro movements of your eyes or the mind. Micro expressions. Thank you. Versus this other thing that we're picking up on.
Absolutely.
So to me that excites me. I think that's super interesting. So you have ions and other institutes that studied this, but not many.
No.
Right? So why aren't scientists like getting super stoked about this and going, "Oh my God, this is amazing." We're capturing these on, EGGs or, what's the other one?
Yeah, well, plenty of people are getting
EEG,
excited, but you're right. Why isn't the mainstream catching on? So we could talk on and on. I think my favorite answer to that, because of personal experience, is what I call fear of psi. I think fear of psi is a real thing. And the reason I think that's a real thing, because when I first came out to San Francisco Bay Area to kind of hook up with these consciousness researchers, I joined the parapsychology research group of San Francisco, and they were talking about fear of psi. And this is 30 years ago. I had long hair, and I was like, I don't have any fear of psi. I want to see auras. I had my wife do like acupuncture to try to open my third eye because I really wanted to see auras, and I was so into it. And then I had an experience in Cleve Baxter's lab, who you may know, the Secret Life of Plants, the guy, the polygraph guy who showed the plants don't like the mailman.
Yeah, wasn't that that was originally done in the 70s, I think, right?
Yeah. So he was still alive a while back then. And I went down. I was taken down to his lab because a psychic, this guy wanted to do an experiment with a psychic trying to influence human cancer cells. And this is when, in the intro, you said I was at the Brain Tumor Research Center. So I was just brought along to be the cell guy. And so we went down. Cleve Baxter has a lab in San Diego, and I carried these cells on an airplane. I'm sure it was hugely illegal. So I'm there setting him up, centrifuging, getting him ready to put his little electrodes in, and Cleve Baxter's chatting me up, and he realized that I had been feeding these cells, and every week I'd feed them and then thin them out. And he was like, "Forget about the psychic. These cells think that you are their daddy, so you're going to be the one that tries to communicate with them." It's completely unexpected. So I was like, okay, so I did a little meditation, a little prayer to the deceased person the cells came from,
Yeah.
and sent out love vibes. And then I looked over across the room, and Cleve Baxter and these guys, they were like jaws dropped. I went over, and the polygraph had just gone nuts, like you see for an earthquake. And I had a vasovagal response. I nearly fainted. I had to sit down, or I was going to faint. And so then that's the moment where I realized, because it was such an I mean, I'm getting chills right now. It was just such a profound example right in front of my eyes. And it revealed that there was some fear in me because of that vasovagal response. So I think that's what, and it translates out into all kinds of territory and security. It's frightening. And I think for me, I think that's one of the influences. I hope the work at the IONS, the work of IONS helps to mitigate and change and have people be more at ease and accept their psychic abilities over time.
Do you think there's a connection between that fear of psi, as you say, and the fear, like someone, let's says, of ghosts?
Geez, I never thought about connecting that. Yeah, seems like similar. Maybe a little bit more about, I don't know, life and death. Fear of death is kind of the famous one. Maybe ghosts are overlap with that a bit. I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It's a good question.
Yeah, because I think there's an element of just the fear of something that is so beyond your control. And a couple of nights ago, Ray Hobbs from the UNX Network, which this podcast is rebroadcast on, and John Burroughs, who's a Rendlesham Forest 1981 witness, UFO witness. These are people who've been in the field for a long time, and we're talking about witnessing these objects, and I think that society, the reason we don't embrace it, I think it is because there's a fear of this unknown factor. We're thinking, okay, so if the UAP UFO is a threat, that seems to get the most attention, right? Because then it's about life and death.
Yeah.
But other than that, a lot of people they don't even want to talk about the subject, and I think sometimes when they are derisive and just kind of laugh at the subject, I think part of that is a kind of a fear, because it's such an X factor that people don't know what to do with it, and I could see that of anything that's kind of paranormal now that I think about it.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned about control. I think that's a big part of it, is this illusion that we're in control of what's going on. We're the one directing everything, and then something that threatens that. The part of our mind is like, hey, but I'm not controlling. I want to be able to control everything.
Right,
So
and maybe like you said, the life and death factor is actually kind of a part of that, because that's we oftentimes want to believe in something, want to believe in an afterlife, because death is something you can't control. And you want to think that that's not the end. Like, I'll keep going. It's fine. I don't have to worry about that now because I'm good. So wow, it's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do you believe in an afterlife?
Yeah, yes, I do. I mean, I don't know what it is or how it works, but for sure.
Tyler Henry was on the podcast some time ago, and he apparently is able to speak to spirits, and some of the things I've seen him do, it's astounding. His readings, he won't commit to saying yes, I know what God is, or I know what the afterlife is. All he's able to do is say, I receive these messages from these, spirit guides or whatever you want to call them. Um, but he believes that there is a continuation of life after death.
Mm-hmm. I'll make a quick mention of another experiment that we did at IONS, and this was with the whole team. So Helene Wabe, Arnaud Delorme, Lauren Carpenter, and Dean Radin.
Yeah.
So it was a clairvoyant. We had clairvoyant seers coming in to witness Reiki healing, so bioenergy healing on folks, and looking at kind of 5 different clairvoyant seers. Would they say things similarly? Again, was there corroboration, or how do they perceive differently or the same?
Yeah.
And one of the many things that came out of that, and this is and also correlated with the degree of efficacy of the healing, so benefit to the folks that were being healed, was the showing up of discarnate beings. So beings showing up that were visible, that could be seen by the clairvoyants. It was very interesting, and we're actually now taking that and drilling down into looking more carefully at that data. So
what do you think?
And stuff like that.
Yeah. What do you think the mechanism is for that? For instance, how could the mind's eye, how does one perceive an apparition? But a camera can't, infrared can. Why don't we have instruments that can actually capture what the person is seeing?
Yeah. The half of that question is easy, which is there's so much that we don't have instruments. There's just there's more going on that we can't capture with instruments than we can. And you think about just the neurobiology, you start to look about how does our vision formed, and that's the circuitry that basically filters out and amplifies and alters. By the time it gets up to our cortex, it's excluded almost all the actual data coming into the pupil. So we know that we're only seeing a small fraction. And so then the instruments we build, are just even more limited because they're aimed at a certain thing. So it's easy to understand why we couldn't pick it up with instruments. How they can, I don't know. Obviously,
well, I suppose if we knew how they could, we could probably create instruments, right?
Yeah,
or at least try to. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. And you said before that, the electromagnetic frequency coming from the brain or the heart, it fades out at a distance. It doesn't go indefinitely. However, if we're going to go down this road, isn't it possible, or I'm making the presumption, also ask you, is it possible, do you think, that spooky action at a distance, something like that, could be occurring with our thoughts, with our electromagnetic frequencies, our heart energy? Is it possible that energy could also be communicating with some other place and time? We just don't see it. All we measure is what we're able to measure, but that it's actually interacting through space and time in a way that's just not noticeable yet.
Absolutely. I mean, I believe that to demonstrate it and study it, that's pretty much the mission of the whole team at IONS. Just generally, I would, kind of the angle toward that I would say I personally take is that it's absolutely an illusion that we are separate. Your mind, you got your conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the superconscious mind. So even our subconscious minds, I believe, are overlapping at some dimension, right? I mean, we can see our physical body ends here. We know the electromagnetic field goes out about 3 or 4 feet. What else aspect of it? So, folks that believe that consciousness precedes, consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of the brain. Basically, our body is this kind of little suit that our consciousness is animating. So consciousness is coming out in this field, and the superconscious mind, we're all connected. And so that for sure transcends space and time. Well, not for sure, but
but we're pretty sure.
Yeah, pretty sure.
I'm with you. I mean, that's where I am. I will admit, I would like to think that my consciousness and the ones that I love, continue on.
Yeah.
afterwards. I don't know for a fact I'd like to, but that's why I call myself a part-time atheist, because that's important for me to kind of accept that might not be the case, or if it is, it's not anything that I understand
Yeah.
that is, because it might be like the caterpillar into the butterfly. I might be something completely unrecognizable to myself.
Yeah.
And so I have to come to grips with that, death could be the end, at the very least, in the way that I understand consciousness now.
Yeah.
For me, I think that's healthy,
Mhm,
because
mhm.
I don't want to lean on something so desperately. Um, you know, and also one thing I'd appreciate about atheists is it's like, well, this is it. Like, this is it. Like, make the best of it while you're here. And that's a great philosophy. Um, so
It
the
it
Yeah.
is, I could just add to that, you can come to the same kind of, feeling if you just, take the Eckhart Tolle path that everything is now, so
Mhm.
this is it could
Yeah.
mean just like now is everything.
Right. Well, I mean, some theoretical physics certainly uh, entertains the idea that time is really non-linear, that we everything is happening actually at the same time.
Yeah, yeah,
But and that goes to the consciousness thing, like trying to wrap our head around what consciousness is. I think that the Buddhists still have one up on modern day science, because that thought a model of a thought experiment of starting with, okay, I see myself. Okay, am I this whole thing? But I'm also my eye, and then my
mhm,
eye is made of a retina, and then the retina is made of, other smaller fibers, and then down to the molecule. And so what is the self? There is no beginning and end
yeah,
to who you are.
absolutely. Just a quick tidbit about lucid dreaming
Yeah.
to you know go where is science on all
Hmm.
this? So there's a part of your brain that's kind of credited with having our sense of self and other. This is where kind of that's been located.
Hmm.
And in normal dreams, it's called the right dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And
Okay.
in normal dreams, it's shut down, and that's kind of the characteristic of dreaming. And it's also the kind of the apex of the sensory motor coordination. So it's shut down, and that's why your arms and legs are paralyzed when you're in rapid eye movement sleep, right? So what's really cool in demonstrating the actual event of lucidity is when people get lucid in their dreams, the prefrontal cortex lights up. So it kind of matches with this sense of self, because the lucid dream is experience of yourself. You're waking up, you're inside of the dreamscape.
Hmm.
So it's fantastic that the neuroscience, that the neurobiology matches that with the prefrontal cortex lighting up.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's but then what is the self? I'm just saying that's what neuroscience. It's cool that
Says.
there's at
Yeah.
least that matchup,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly.
it's a fun little tidbit.
Right. Awareness isn't necessarily the self, although psychologists or neuropsychologists are saying, well, that's what the self is. It's just a fraction of a second of
Mhm.
being aware
Yeah,
of the mind, right? But
yeah.
it still doesn't explain the mind. It doesn't, And I think a lot of psychologists or neuroscientists, say that, and they're like, oh, well, that's it. That's the end of the story. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
no, not quite. So I'm thankful that Garrett, you and so many other great scientists are working at, the institute. And if everyone wants to find out more about Garrett, go to noetic.org, and your bio's on the website there too. Do you have do you do conferences or anything, speaking engagements that are coming up?
I'm writing a book. It's coming out in July.
Okay, is it a follow up to Vibes?
It's called Why Vibes Matter.
There
Yeah.
you go. It is nice, because vibes do matter.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to leave us with anything, Garrett? Any one thought? What would it be?
I would leave you with the thought from Charlie Morley's teacher. It's like,
Hmm.
why do lucid dreaming? And we talked a lot about that in this, but his his reason is more awake, more aware, more aware, more kind, more kind. That's the point.
All right, Garrett. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
All right, and thank you everyone for joining us. I'm grateful as always, you guys in the chat. You rock. I love you. Thank you so much for supporting the show. This podcast will be rebroadcast on the UNX network, 2 a.m. on Fridays Eastern Time and 11 p.m. Pacific Time Thursday nights. Thank you to Ray Hobbs and Margie K of the UNX network. Until next time, everyone, peace and love, and live in the mystery.